Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Let's get started. All right, so for DIY number 1, I am going to take 2 foam boards. So these are just the regular foam boards that you can get at the Dollar Tree, and I am going to mark every 4 inches on both ends of just one of the foam boards. I am now going to take my yardstick and I'm just going to connect those dots that I made, and that way I can create long lines across the foam board. Alright, so now I am going to hot glue both foam boards together. I'm just going to put a whole bunch of glue and then place one foam board on top of the other as evenly as possible. So now I am going to take my X-Acto knife and I'm just going to trace by cutting all along the lines. So basically I want to create long 4-inch boards. And now I am going to take 3 of them and just kind of keep them together, leaving about a 1/2 inch here and there in between each board. Now I'm going to take one of the additional ones and place it on top and mark where I need to make a cut. And I'm going to then take that one and trace it on the remaining board. That way I can have 2 of the smaller 4-inch boards. Right now, I am going to give it just one coat of Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the linen white. Alright guys, so now it's time to put everything together. What I want to create here is a shutter. So I am going to place the boards, the longer ones, right next to each other. Again, leaving about 1/2 inch in between and making sure that each end is flush with the board going across them. And then I am just going to place some hot glue to secure them together. I am now going to place globs of glue, 2 on each board, right on the board that's across, and that's basically to make it seem like it's bolts. Once it dries, I will give it 2 coats of the same Rust-Oleum chalk paint in the linen white. To give it more of a rustic farmhouse look, I am going to distress it and antique it using antiquing wax by Waverly. Alright guys, so now I am going to take this wreath from the Target dollar spot. It was $3 and I'm going to leave it just as is. I will add a pick from the Dollar Tree and attach it to the right side of the wreath. I am then going to place a small screw on the top portion of the shutter, and then I'll have a place to hang the wreath from. Because the boards were doubled, having a screw in there was actually fine to screw in. And it's not very tight, of course, but the wreath was not heavy at all, so it was sufficient. And look how beautiful and realistic this foam board shutter looks. Adding the two foam boards together just added perfect thickness to each board. And what an easy decor to transition from Christmas to winter by basically just changing up the wreath. My friends, I do want to remind you about my second channel, Beauty on Purpose at Home. I'd love to connect with you there as well. I do have the link in the description box. This is where I would put my videos on decorate with me, clean with me, organize, and that kind of stuff. So if you want to head down after you watch this video and check that one out, I'd love to connect with you there. Alright guys, so for this next DIY, I am going to make a bead garland. Now, we've seen them all. They are all over YouTube with crafters and DIYers making this bead garlands, but I have not made one myself. So I am going to take some leftover drop cloth that I have had for since end of October, I think. I made some DIYs using the drop cloth, and I have these strips left over, and I am going to use them to make the tassels at the end of the bead garland. So I'm just going to fold it in about 10 to 12 inches long, and then I am going to separate them in as even bundles as possible so that I have enough to make 2 tassels. And I'm sure you've seen this before. Basically, you just place a string or cord, and in this case I am using jute twine, and I'm just going to tie it right down the middle, and then I'm going to use a smaller jute twine to tie it around the top portion to create that tassel knot in the top, and then cut any excess strings or strands that I may not need. Santa's coming to visit. No, he wouldn't miss this in Christmas times. Now that I have the first tassel complete, I'm going to use one of these thicker needles. I think they're for like yarn, and I am going to use it to thread the beads through. So I'm just going to thread the jute twine through the little hole there, and then I am going to start threading the beads. Now these beads I got on Amazon very recently, and I do have them in my Amazon store. A lot of the products that I am using today, including the drop cloth, I do have in my Amazon store, which is linked down below. I don't know how many beads I placed. I just kept threading until the little jute twine size that I had picked was pretty much all filled except for maybe the top 2 inches, which is what I'm going to use to then tie the second tassel to it. Alright guys, so I wanted to try something different. Dixie Belle Paint Company sent me this texture sea salt. It's like a powder, and you can add it to any paint and it would make it into a very textured, very thick kind of like paste. Now, the more you put in it, the thicker it will be. If you want to, it's meant to like, if you want to like add texture to furniture, of course, you may not want this much texture. I am actually putting enough powder in there where it's going to be like a like paste. It almost felt like flour when you add water to it. So I am going to start brushing it all around the beads, but I'm not looking for full coverage. I'm looking for these garland to kind of look almost like it's been around for a while and it's just crusted up. So I'm just going to brush it all around, and then I actually take some in my hands and start placing it all over. And right at the end, I roll the beads so that for two reasons. One, any paint that got in between the beads would kind of separate, and then also to flatten out any parts of the paste that are sticking up. And we're just about done, guys. So this one is not as Christmassy as you would think a Christmas garland would look like, but it is just so farmhouse, so cute, and I think it will look great around any Christmas decoration, any farmhouse year-round as well as winter. All right, guys, I also want to remind you that I do have an Instagram page. If you have an Instagram account, I would love to connect with you there. I post daily, multiple times, behind the scenes, little clips of my videos. I'd love to connect with you there as well. The link is in the description box. All right, guys, for this next DIY, I am going to take 3 of these Dollar Tree bells, and I am going to remove the top portion of each bell. I am going to use the same technique that I used for the beads, and I am going to place some of this Country Gray chalk paint by Rustolium and add some of the sea salt texture powder from Dixie Belle, and I will have that the link to the sea spray, that's what it's called, sea spray textured powder to the Dixie Belle website in the description box. Now for this one, I am adding a lot less. I want it to be a little bit more manageable, not as thick, but it's still going to be pretty thick. And then I'm just going to start spreading it and painting the bells on the top, just on the outside of it with it. After this was dry, I then went on and gave it one more coat of just the paint, no texture, just to cover any areas where you would still see some of the red. And I also painted the inside. Alright, so this is what the bells are looking like. And guys, the texture on these bells look like concrete. It is stunning. I love the way these turned out. Alright, so now I'm just going to dry brush some white chalk paint by Rustolium in the linen white. Very little. I just want to add a little bit more dimension to them and a little bit more, kind of like for them to look more like concrete. And I'm also going to add some antiquing wax on the top and on the rim on the bottom just to add a little bit more of a rusty, like kind of like it's rusted through the years kind of thing.
To have a place that I can come home to. Yes, I am on my way. We'll put our differences aside and just enjoy this moment of peace and love and happiness. We come together to celebrate. Yes, every time the snow is falling down and it is cold outside, we gather around the fireplace and no one cares.
All right, so now everything is dry and it's time to just put things together. I'm going to thread some nautical rope from the Dollar Tree right through them. And each bell is going to have a different length rope. So I knotted the inside and then I'm going to add some hot glue and just pull it through, and that way it's not going to go anywhere. I did that to all of them, leaving each rope longer than the previous one. That way they all have different sizes. All right, now I'm going to take more of that nautical rope from the Dollar Tree and I'm just going to separate some of the strands, and I'm going to take one of the strands and wrap it around the base of each bell and hot glue it in place. The reason why I separated the strands is when you separate them and you grab one of the strands, when you place them, you just have like a whole ton of jute twines together, and instead of looking like rope, it just looks like jute twine. So I'm going to hot glue it and just making sure that I don't go way too high, but that it covers that base and that it covers enough to where it transitions to the rope nicely. And I'll do that on all 3 bells. So the next step after I tied or walled the base of each bell, I then kind of put them flat and just kind of placed them where I thought I wanted to see them. So one longer, one mid, and then one on the top. And then I made a knot right above that higher. And then now we're going to make a greenery to go up here for it. All right, these evergreen picks I got on Amazon, and I do have them in my Amazon store, which is again linked in the description box. And I'm just going to use 3. We're going to keep the whole 3 theme here going. And I'm just going to take more of that strand that I separated from the rope, and I'm going to use some to tightly bring everything together, secure it with hot glue, and then cut the excess picks that are left over on the top. I am now going to take this ribbon from the Dollar General. It's a Merry Christmas ribbon. Very cute. I love this ribbon. And it was $5 and you get a whole bunch and like a roll. And I'm just going to make a very simple bow and secure it with some jute twine and then attach it to the top of the decor. And I'm going to leave some of the stem poking through the top just like that. I want to see that stem on the others on the top above the bow. And then I'm just going to add a little pine cone here just to kind of finish things off. And then I added some jute twine to the back to be able to hang it. Look at these bells. So this has to be my favorite, although I really loved all of them, especially the shutter. But these bells just took a whole different look. And all you have to do to switch them to winter is basically change the bow to maybe something more wintry. They are stunning. All right, guys, this is it for today. Thank you so much for watching. So I just told you which one is my favorite. I'd love to know in the comments which one is your favorite or which one you'd like to try. If you're visiting for the first time, thank you so much for coming by. I hope you consider subscribing and joining our YouTube family. And as always, if you're coming back, thank you so much for coming back. I appreciate your time. I have another playlist here with tons more of Christmas inspiration. Check it out. I'll see you later. God bless and have a Merry Christmas, guys. Bye.